Hello, everyone out there, and welcome to another session of Mita's Deep Dive Express modules. These modules are being brought to you by our gracious sponsor, 420 Collections. 420 Collections includes two different brands under that umbrella. It's 420 Medibles, which are some deliciously potent edibles that are available at dispensaries throughout the great state of Arizona, as well as 420 Skincare, which is their CBD infused topical line that is available throughout the country. So please check out 420 Collections. We are very gracious for their support. So we have a treat here today. We have Miss Kelsey Applebaum with us from Vangst. She is the head of community partnership. And today we are going to be talking about trends and getting employment in the cannabis industry. What are the trends and what are we seeing out there? So, Kelsey, I would love to get an opportunity to learn a bit about you. I am Caleb Tice. I'm the host here of these sessions. So, Kelsey, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Applebaum. As Caleb mentioned, I'm the head of community partnerships with Vangst. I've been with Vangst, I always laugh, since day 5, and have worked my way up through cannabis in terms of my career by recruiting and partnering with companies around the world to help build out their teams. Throughout that career, I have worked with companies in 27 states and 5 countries in regulated markets. Advising them on the type of people that they should hire, hiring those individuals that are integral parts of their team. And then now, of course, I'm just continuing to educate the community on making the right type of choice when it comes to the hiring decisions.
Wow, so day 5, huh? You're going to have to explain that a little bit to me.
Yeah, I always laugh because I didn't join day 1, but it felt like I did. When I got in touch with things, I stumbled into a career fair in cannabis, which was actually run by the company. They were a team of maybe 4 people at that point. I met our CEO, Carson Humiston's dad. We connected immediately, and then the rest is history. So from 2016 on, I've been very invested in our growth in the industry.
That is awesome. That is awesome to just highlight of you never quite know what opportunities and things are going to happen. So if you're able to do it, say yes, go check it out. Go see what's going to happen. And it could turn into a career and take you places that you never thought that you were going to go. So
Exactly.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. So of course, the big question for anybody looking to get in the cannabis industry is how do I get employment? Sort of what opportunities are there out there? And particularly with the social equity applicants, we have a lot of interested parties going in to look to the licenses. But there's so many different positions, so many things that are there to help to support the operations. So what are some of the things that you're seeing as far as in trends with cannabis hiring?
Yeah, well, the trend is up. Cannabis is growing really quickly. I always laugh that when I first got into the industry, we were a very intimate industry. The markets were much smaller. There was only about 12 markets that were actually in the regulated space. Now we're at 38 with Connecticut coming online.
Yep,
Just
saw that this morning.
yeah, and moving from medical to adult use is a huge win. So really just seeing that trend is that there are more opportunities than there ever have been. That being said, I know you touched on how people get in. It's going to look completely different based on where you're based, what type of role you're looking at, what type of organization you really want to partner with. And everybody's path can look very different. Some people walk in, they get a job immediately. Some people really need to wait for that dream job to come about, be created, or just that opportunity become available. When it comes to those opportunities, it looks very different based on that person. But what I think everybody has in common when they're looking for that job is that they have to be ready for the adventure. Cannabis is not this cookie cutter industry that, you walk in, you apply, and everything's hunky dory. You have to invest a lot of energy into it. You have to be ready and willing to, get involved in the industry that is really being built in front of you, which is really exciting.
Definitely, definitely. Every day is different. So not only just the many hats that you wear when starting a new business, but with a new industry, the industry is wearing many hats. And each day it looks a little different. The regulatory environment is shifting. And you really have to stay on top of it and have the resources that can help you to guide through that.
Yep.
So what happens when the new market comes online? So of course, obviously, we mentioned Connecticut. That still is not today, but like, so what happens when a new market comes online?
Well, a lot happens. But from a candidate perspective, the biggest thing that people need to understand is it takes time. Just because Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, even any of these other markets that are switching from medical to adult use or just coming online with a medical program to start, it takes a long time. It might take a year and a half to actually see the jobs that you're looking forward to come online. So patience is key. Cannabis from the outside, if you're looking at a Forbes article, seems like it's moving extremely fast, and in a lot of ways it is, but there is a lot of work that goes into actually launching a new market. So anybody that's in these new markets that's excited because they're seeing all these amazing taglines about X state is online or they're doing all these things, understand that you're going to have to be patient. It's going to take a long time to actually get up and running. I always remind people we're dealing with a plant. We're not dealing with a manufactured, product. It's going to take around 9 months for that plant to actually grow. And even on the front and back end of that, there's a lot of that goes into it before we can actually get to the growing aspect. So just be patient. Understand that when you're looking at a new market, there's a lot of opportunity, but the opportunity might not happen as quickly as you want it to happen. So take that time, do your research, connect with people, network, figure out where you want to be in the industry, how you want to grow in the industry, and really take advantage of that time to sit back and plan your career as much as you can. Oop, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Gotta love on Zoom, just making sure I'm background noise. So it's all about the planning, and even with a new market, you're absolutely right. I saw an article this morning. I mean, New York, we saw all of that a couple of months ago, and the legislature failed to select the people for the regulatory board, so it's now been delayed a bit. It
Yeah.
just those things happen. So there's a great opportunity for increasing skills. The trade shows are coming back. That is
Yeah.
one thing that I can't highlight enough how important that is. And solely not just for the fact of meeting people, but you may discover something that you didn't know that you want to focus in on that area, or you learn about the most cutting edge technology that's coming out,
Yeah.
because it's always changing, always changing. Yeah, we're things are being automated, that's for sure. So
Definitely.
so with cannabis, from what I've heard, it sounds like there's a lot of parallels to focusing in on your other career path. They're really doing an inventory of what do I want to do, where can I contribute. What are some of the positions that are unique to cannabis, and how are employers communicating those unique needs?
Sure. Every employer is going to look different. Just because you see the same job title at multiple companies, there's a lot of factors that go into play to actually being successful in that role. Looking at the parallels, at this point, our industry is big enough where almost any single role that you see in cannabis, there is a parallel or a balance outside of the industry. If you're in marketing, if you're in finance, if you're in an agriculture-based role outside the industry, there is a transition area in cannabis. That being said, every company is going to look a little different. A company that has 46, licenses is going to look very different than a brand new company with 2 licenses. They're going to operate differently. The big divide that you're going to find between those is the person that they want to hire. I say a lot that yes, your resume can get you an interview, but who you are is going to get you that job, and who you are is going to need to really feel like a good match with the company that you're interviewing with. It's not just about I have the best resume out there. I have all the skills that you're looking for. I have the deepest understanding of blank. It's who you are with it, because I think anybody that's in this industry knows that it takes a lot of grit, takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of understanding that we're doing this for more than just the dollar. We're doing this to actually create an industry that embraces people of all backgrounds, hopefully gets even more progressive in that sense. And also we're doing this because the plant is medicine. A lot of companies really focus on people that align with those values. So when you're looking at these opportunities, you can always look at the parallels, but what really sets these companies apart is what you're looking for and what they're looking to add to their company.
Yep, culture. Ultimately, it's
Yes.
the company culture that, with the amount of opportunities, it has to mesh well. And those are the organizations that see success, that are able to expand it because they're running on all cylinders and things are all fitting together. And that ultimately is the people, definitely.
Definitely.
So kind of along those lines, like are you finding that there are some cannabis skills that employers are asking for that you're having difficulty finding, or you're having to direct candidates for additional training? Like what are some of those challenges?
Well, it's going to look different in every role. There is a lot of opportunity in cannabis that's pretty straightforward, but something that every individual that's looking to break into cannabis, especially versus those that are already in and looking to grow, is that a lot of those things circle around compliance and personality. So some of the skills that people need, they need to also understand that whatever advice they bring to the table, whatever skill they bring to the table is going to be matched with a compliance component. That affects everybody. So let's say you're in marketing. You can't just market the same way that you did at Nike. You can't market the same way that you did at Dole. You have to understand that the regulations in cannabis are going to affect your success. So when employers are looking for people with a skill set, they're also making sure that they are people that are open-minded, flexible, and not stuck in their ways, because you can't be stuck in your ways when you have compliance telling you exactly what to do. You have to be open-minded. And that compliance isn't linear. That compliance changes every day, week, month, year, depending on the market you're in, especially a new market. You might find that you wake up and they have a completely new regulation. An example being, I remember, when was it? 2018 in Arizona, they said no more extracted products, no more infused products. We're pausing until we figure out regulations. And all of a sudden, these businesses that were making edibles or tinctures had to pause production immediately. Now that was reversed pretty quickly, but that stopped their entire process from really being fulfilled. And I remember talking to companies and they were like, we have to pause on hiring because we don't know what's going to happen. Arizona set out this law and they're putting a stop on it for the time being. Those things affect your job. So if companies are looking for someone with a skill set, that skill set has to be matched with somebody that is going to understand that no day is the same, and go from there. Now, if you are looking at the skill set component specifically, there's a lot of things that people have parallels with and also make a difference. Where I really like the parallels and the trends that we're seeing in cannabis is that we're not just solely focused on seeing individuals just from the industry. We want to see individuals from outside of the industry. There are parallels even in cultivation. These companies might not just be looking for a traditional market grower. Maybe now they're looking for somebody that comes from the tulip industry because that cultivation process looks pretty similar. There's a lot of skills right now that cannabis is becoming more comfortable with getting out of their actual comfort bubble because the parallels are there and they actually have the resources to train on the things that don't align right off the bat.
Yep. Yep, we're in a very the 2020s are going to be a very amazing decade and a lot of transition. I mean, I think we've gone across that point at which I mean, there's still detractors, but the majority of the country is supportive of the industry, and we're just going to continue to see that as it gets accepted and part of those best practices and things in the other business world that they found that have worked. We're going to see a nice marriage there for sure.
Well, and cannabis is no longer like a small production industry, right? It's like way back in the day, if you're looking at, let's say, alcohol or specifically beer, there was a long time before the Budweisers and before these like mass conglomerates came in where it was a more intimate industry, right? They were able to do small batch production. They were able to really focus on consumer feedback and create products around that versus focusing specifically on the bottom line. Then you saw this trend where that was getting popular, but that's not sustainable in such a small and like intimate fashion. It needs to be a much more built out process. It needs to almost feel a little bit more generic because you're feeding the masses versus only supplying a small community. What's beautiful about that is it all comes full circle and now there's a balance and the ecosystem is really finding that equilibrium. You know, there's the big companies and now there's the smaller companies that focus on the craft product. Cannabis is the same way. It is an ecosystem. There are the big companies that require a completely different type of skill set than the smaller companies that are looking at a completely different type of persona as well. So a big company, let's say they're hiring somebody to oversee production, a COO, who's going to be really involved in that facility, who's going to be really involved in the supply chain aspect. they might be looking for somebody that comes from a Six Sigma background. They need to have Six Sigma certifications. They need to have worked in a high production facility, such as a Coors or such as a large kombucha manufacturer, because they need to understand compliance from the alcohol aspect, as well as understanding how the supply chain actually affects the way that they build out a process, and understand that intimately enough where they can change and create solutions when those problems come up, since they are moving at such a rapid pace. Where on the flip side, if you're working with a smaller company in a production facility, they're going to be looking for a completely different type of background, because that person needs to be focused on the craft product. There's a balance between both, but the skill set's completely different. Not one is better than the other. I mean, from a consumer standpoint, I tend to go craft, but I understand the value of some of these larger entities that are creating more like widespread product. So from a skill set perspective and a personality perspective, it's completely different.
Yeah, definitely. So it's part of the environment of what you want to go into. You can imagine that out with the larger companies is going to be more regimented, is going to have more standardization, maybe more specialization as far as in what you're doing, versus in a startup, in a smaller company, you wear 15 different hats and you do all 15 of those every day and you bounce between it. And that's part of, some people enjoy that. Others enjoy knowing that this is pretty much what my day is going to look like, give or take maybe a few fires I got to put out.
Yeah, welcome to cannabis. That is all of our lives. If you are somebody that is like solely stuck on your job description and walking into this like monotonous, redundant job, it's probably not the industry for you. You need to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. You need to say, well, shoot, I've never done that before, but my team is supportive of me, and I think that I have the ability to do it, so I'm going to try it. And that separates the people who are in cannabis for a job versus in cannabis for a career. Because if you're in it for a career, you actually want to feel like you are not this autonomous, or you are this autonomous person that could really be put in any situation and be successful.
Yep, it's all about what drives you and what you get enjoyment in, for sure. So I think that's, I know you've heard it a couple times already here, is doing that personal reflection and really finding about where you think that you can provide the greatest benefit, and going into it like that. Where can I provide the greatest benefit, rather than what is going to be the most beneficial to me? It's a mindset, something that I like to do. So
Definitely. If you're too selfish, you probably won't be happy, because this industry is just, it's changing too quickly to be stuck in your ways.
And it's more of a community. I mean, that's one of the things that I've really found, that if you resonate with the community, you resonate with the community. And there, it doesn't matter where I've been at a trade show, new place, when Oklahoma came online, being in Florida for the first time, and just like, these are my people. Like you can just, you tell, and that's when you know that you're in the right spot. Definitely. So there's, we've talked about kind of supply chain, and there's so many different aspects, and you may have heard this term about vertically integrated. So that is basically everything from plant going into the ground, seed, ultimately to being sold to the consumer. So that's vertical integration. What aspects of that supply chain vertical are you seeing more opportunities available? And what's your biggest surprise there?
Yeah, well, I think that the first thing that I always like to say is vertical integration is not a one size fit all thing. Every market has different licenses. For instance, some markets have delivery, some markets don't. Some markets consider vertical integration to include that distribution aspect, some don't. Some states say that you cannot be vertically integrated at all. Some states actually push for full vertical integration in any license holder. That's kind of the beauty of cannabis, is it's not a one size fit all industry. And it changes from state to state and market to market. So first and foremost, there's that. When it comes to vertical integration, when you're looking at an employee, I think that it shouldn't affect your decision to work with a company if they're vertically integrated or not, unless you're in a position where you're really focused on transitioning your skill set. So like, let's say that a really big focus for you is at some point to have an opportunity, let's say in cultivation, but your background's in retail. You might find that you're growing within a retail environment, but you're really invested in that company. They also have a cultivation license, and they offer opportunities for you to be a cross-functional player and actually grow in that sense. There's a positive. The con is that you are learning from the company itself, and you might be stuck in that pattern of only learning from that one company's operation. It's not a bad thing, but it almost is not a reality in cannabis. Even let's say like these big five companies that are out there, they operate completely differently in Arizona versus Maryland versus Connecticut versus California. So if you're so set on working with a vertically integrated company only, you might get a little bit stuck in your ways about processes, mentality, culture, all these things that keep you in a bubble in cannabis versus exposing you to so many different types of environments in cannabis. I think it just depends on the person. There's a person for every company and a company for every person. I personally, if I was on the plant touching side of the business, would probably want to have experience working with the biggest of the biggest companies, as well as a brand new company with 2 employees, and understanding how to find the balance between the two so that I could be a utility player in both. So if you're looking at companies, don't think that vertical integration makes a company any better than a company that's not. It could go both ways. It could be better for you. It could also actually hinder you in your growth, depending on what type of role you're looking to succeed in your career.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's you made great points on that. What are you seeing as the most in-demand positions? So what are you hearing more so maybe from the employer side, and then maybe just a couple from the candidate side?
Yeah. Well, right now, specifically based on like today and history, the most in demand jobs are going to be more on the ground level. The reason being is coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people are getting much better benefits on unemployment than they would working in an entry level job. Some people are making $6 more an hour in that unemployment than they would actually working in a facility or in a retail environment as a bud tender. Or similar roles. So right now, today, that's an in-demand role, but it's changing very quickly since those benefits are coming to a close. In general, for the past 2 years, the most in-demand positions could be all over the place. I wish I could pinpoint one. Every company is hiring for everything at some point. Even if today they say they're not, tomorrow we get a call and they are ready to open that role. In terms
That's how
of
quickly it changes, right?
Yeah, it does. So it's funny when people ask like, what are the most in-demand positions? I'm like, well, shoot, everything. Everything is in demand because our industry is growing. And look, we see it all the time. There's a company that one day has 2 licenses, and then the next week there's an announcement that they've acquired a business and now have 47 licenses. Their changes in hiring can happen as quickly as 2 days. So in demand roles, everything is in demand. Everything is growing. All of these companies across the board need people, and that's why we're here to help, and we do so successfully every day. But from the candidate side, I always think that people are really eager to get in a management role because they don't want to start over. What I will say is that there is beauty in starting from the beginning. And every single time I talk to a cultivator or a VP of retail, they always say the best employees that they have are the ones that grew from the ground level. And that means that you might have to determine from a economic standpoint, is this the right time for me to make this investment into a career in cannabis? Am I ready to maybe take a pay cut or really do something and start from the beginning and grind? Am I ready for that emotionally or from a paycheck standpoint? You also need to understand that that could actually help you accelerate much quicker than just coming in a management role and trying to play catch up. There's a lot of factors that go into play, but I think that a lot of times employees are so hyper focused on having a management title and not having to really grind and start from the beginning. But Caleb, the best experience that you have comes from actually getting in and like keeping your hands in the ground. How do you expect to be a head of cultivation if you actually haven't seen the full life cycle of the plant and been in charge of not just putting that seed in the ground, but trimming it, taking care of it, watering it? If you're just only focused on being in a management role without being in the production aspect of cannabis, regardless of what the position is, plant touching or not, you're going to find that it doesn't make you as successful. If I came into banks and was solely focused on being in a management and strategic based role, I wouldn't be able to make the right decisions for the companies I partner with because I wouldn't know exactly what they need. I find out exactly what they need because I started from the ground level and I was able to really understand from an intimate level how to be the best partner I could be. And I wouldn't have changed that experience at all if I had to.
Yep, you have to be able to learn the business, and you learn the business by being at that point that is customer facing, because that
Yeah.
is where you're in business. We're in business for revenues, and that's where the revenues come from. So I can tell just a quick story on my background related to that. Of even with the experience I had in Arizona, I was a license holder. I was the director of operations and compliance and the VP for the region. When I moved up to Oregon, I got a job as a bud tender because I
Mhm.
had never been up here. I didn't know the Oregon market. I needed to get in and also demonstrate for all of the staff that were there that I was willing to get in and get my hands dirty.
Yep.
So within 2 years, I was president of the organization because I
Yes.
had the skill set, but I didn't come in saying and expecting, oh, I've been a manager and then let me learn the market, let me learn the people. I learned it hands on,
Yeah.
and uh, it was very beneficial and successful for me. So don't be afraid to do that, and you'll find, especially that's a good point of some of the smaller companies, you may have the potential for advancement quicker. That is something that I have typically seen there versus at some of the larger organizations. It's going to have a more structured, similar to like a corporate type environment where it's very defined. So something to
Yeah.
just kind of something to
Well,
think
and I
about.
think it's important to note, like, the oldest regulated cannabis companies are still, like, if you look at it like a kid, they're in elementary school. They're learning, they're growing. They might seem like they have all the things planned out and, excuse my French, their shit together, and they don't. They're figuring it out. They're building the plane while they're flying it, right? And you have to understand that, especially as you're looking to break in. They don't know what they're doing. In a lot of ways, they look like they do. In a lot of ways, they might, but in even more ways, they're figuring it out as they go. And that actually is something that works to your advantage if you start over in your career, because in a lot of companies outside of the industry or organizations outside of the industry, everything is planned out. There's a very specific corporate structure. You get raises once a year. You have opportunities from a promotion after 2 years. It's not like that in cannabis. You can go from bud tender to store manager in 6 months. You can go from store manager to director of retail in another 2 months if you have what it takes. So a lot of times people get so caught up with, well, I don't know if I want to start over because I've done that and it's taken me 6 years to even like get to where I am and I've worked really hard. If you have that energy that you can bring to the table and that grit, you can actually advance much quicker than you think. And at that point, it's actually worth being in that entry level role because you then have the trust of your team. You have the ability to problem solve on a very nuclear level. And that's what cannabis craves when it comes to these management roles. They want somebody that doesn't just say the right thing, but actually knows at a very integral and almost intuitive level how to handle things.
Yep.
You have to go through those failures. You have to go through those trials and tribulations as an entry level person that like is dealing with the front or back of house operations in cannabis very, in a very entry level way to actually understand how to grow in the right way in your role.
It builds the trust. That's the thing that I found is it builds the trust in a way that you can't fake.
Mhm.
You have to earn it. There's no other way around it.
Totally.
So are you seeing increased interest from, like, let's focus in just a little bit on Arizona with, of course, adult use just happening. The market's projected to double in the course of the next 3 years. Are
Mhm.
you finding more interest from people looking to relocate into Arizona? Kind of tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on the Arizona market.
Yeah, I mean, I think Caleb, even when you and I spoke back in the day, if you're open to relocation, you have many more opportunities in cannabis because you're actually taking advantage of a growing market versus just waiting for the market to come to you. What's beautiful is that over the past like 5 years that I've been doing this is more so than ever, people are excited to relocate because they get that. Back when I started recruiting, people were very stuck. I don't want to leave. I don't want to do this. I'm really settled. I love Colorado. I love California. I couldn't imagine going to Maryland. I don't want to do that. But I always say if you want a job in cannabis, stay comfortable. If you want a career in cannabis, get out of that comfort zone and figure out where you actually grow. And that's how you become a utility player. So there's a lot of people that just at this point are excited and they're willing to get out of their comfort zone. And I love that. There will always be challenges, but I always remind people you need to find the right person to help guide you through that. So when I was recruiting, I relocated people to 17 markets. That was my bread and butter. I loved it. And what I did is made sure that they felt really comfortable. That's not just telling them about a job, sending them a job description. That's not just telling them about a company and sending them a bio or introducing them to somebody, but that's understanding from a very intimate level, like what the regulations are. I would review policy. I would understand what the difference between working in a dispensary in New Mexico to Vermont would look like, from Florida to Arizona. What are the differences in the way that you're going to talk about the product? If you're in a retail environment, sell the product, what type of product you can sell and what parameters you have, so that when someone thinks about relocation, they don't have to think about the intimidating aspect of starting over. They're just thinking about how exciting it is that they're going to add another tool to their belt. And that's what's fun about the relocation aspect. I'm glad that more people are open to it. I also think that at this point, there's really fun markets to relocate to. There was a while where, you know, people don't want to relocate to Arkansas. They don't want to relocate to Oklahoma. But with Arizona and New York and New Jersey and Virginia, even West Virginia coming online, those tend to be a little bit more exciting than some of the Midwestern states that just don't have the same appeal for some people.
Yeah, yeah, and it's I think it's been an amazing. I don't even want to use the word surprise. It's just been amazing to see about those markets and how well they've done and how much they've exploded. And it's a great option for a lot of people. So I'm really glad to see just how many people are seeing success and building up their programs out there. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome to see. So let's say for entry level, so we're talking, of course, that's where a big part of the draw is. And just reminder that we just talked about too, entry level is going to let you learn the business, and there's get your foot in the door for you to be able to demonstrate your skills. But are there key attributes that you're hearing from employers that they want from bud tenders, or not even necessarily bud tenders, let's say maybe trimmers or greenhouse staff, like some of those entry-level positions?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that, it doesn't really come down to skill set. Anybody could be successful in those roles. Not in the sense of like, if you come from retail, that means that somebody coming from a completely different industry is going to be more successful as a bud tender. But since they are more entry level, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of understanding that not all backgrounds are the same. People can come from any industry and be successful in those roles. The difference is who they are. So in all of those roles, people are looking for somebody who's reliable, somebody who's honest, somebody who has attention to detail. Because whether we want to recognize it or not, the most integral part of our industry are the people that are actually on the front lines and in front of the consumers, whether they are patients or just a customer coming in for an adult use product. Those people are really creating that experience. A bud tender is going to set the tone for how that person views cannabis. I always say, if I were to bring my grandmother into a dispensary and the first person she saw was not paying attention to her, was speaking in a language that she just doesn't understand because she's never been in there before, that's going to make or break her experience in cannabis. So if you're a bud tender and you aren't focusing on really being an empathetic partner as somebody's going through this cannabis purchasing process, that's going to create a really potential positive or negative effect on their experience. So when you're looking at that, these employers are looking for somebody that gets that. They lead with empathy versus rushing someone through a process. There's somebody that's going to understand how to explain product to a first-time consumer to the most like connoisseur type consumer out there and everywhere in between. And they're also going to understand that they shouldn't just be making hard recommendations based on personal opinions. They should be making soft recommendations that could actually benefit somebody's curiosity versus assuming what they want and need. From a cultivation standpoint, if you're looking at a cultivation tech, a trimmer, etc., same thing. They want someone who pays attention to it. It's a plant. It's not a piece of plastic. So when you're trimming, somebody that's not butchering it, but actually taking care of every bud that they are touching and understanding that the energy that they're putting into that is actually something that follows that plant until it touches a consumer. So they're looking for somebody that actually cares about the plant, somebody that wants to be there, somebody that isn't just going to do a hack job because I don't know, there's some companies that will pay by the pound still, whether that's a silly process or not, in their mind. And, you know, they want somebody that actually cares. In those cultivation techs, also somebody that is going to be patient, not just sit there and wanting to rush and become a cultivator, but actually appreciate the fact that by being so close with that plant and by doing all of that dirty, hard work and working in literally an agricultural environment, that it's not glamorous and that doesn't faze them. A lot of people that are looking in, especially the cultivation facility, and they want to be in there, they don't realize that it is like working kind of on a farm. You're going to
It's a
be doing
garden
heavy
job.
lifting.
It's your
Yeah,
farmers.
hard job. It's not glamorous. You're going to be exhausted at the end of the day. It is like, I was talking to a bunch of cultivators for a panel we did the other day, and they're like, it's like a farm. If you are not ready to actually like go and like plant seeds and really make sure that they are grown with love, and like that takes a lot of energy and attention to detail, it's probably not the job for you. It's not as easy as you think, because if you actually treat that plant with love, it's going to look very different than if you treat that plant with aggression. There's studies about that, right? So in all these roles, these companies want people that care, and that's kind of the bottom line. They want somebody that is going to come in and be here for more than just their selfish reasons, and actually be there because we're working for the plant and bringing that medicine to people in one way or another.
Yep. It ultimately comes down to motivation, to where there are plenty of things out there to be able to make money. It's the money's going to come when your passion is there, when you are focused on learning as much as you can about the industry and becoming the best candidate and the most knowledgeable and educated, and being a sponge and absorbing everything.
Yeah.
That's how you can be successful.
Yeah.
It's when I got my retail spot, I had a little bit of retail background as far as in working, but there was a whole set of challenges that I had to learn. I went into it of, let me learn, let me find out what's going on and what I need to do.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I was on a conversation I was having with the VP of talent acquisition at Parallel. He was saying, he's like, we'd much rather hire people for a lot of these roles that actually care versus people that just have the perfect background. And ideally, you're finding the balance. But most companies in cannabis, whether they're small or a huge company like Parallel and everywhere in between, they want a person. They don't want a machine, right? We don't want an automated thing in all aspects of our business. We want to have a personable touch. And if you can bring that, your possibilities are endless, right? Like, you are not pigeonholed if you're somebody that's willing to do it all. This is probably one of the only industries out there where you can sit and go into one role and be in a completely different position 6 years later that you never even thought would be the case. I'm an example of that. I had no idea that this would be where I am in my career, but if you take a chance, you're open to it, you are facing problems with positivity versus frustration and defiance, you end up actually having a really positive experience that is much more fulfilling than you could even imagine.
mm-hmm. So what about some of those other positions, like middle management, and even as high as like C-suite? So those types of positions, like what are you hearing the employers asking for?
Yeah. Employers are really looking for some of these strategic team members. If you're looking, let's start with C-suite. They don't just want a executive in an office. They want somebody that's not afraid to get uncomfortable. And that's something that we see a lot. If somebody is looking to just sit behind a desk and delegate, they're probably not going to be as happy in cannabis, because there's going to be a lot of challenging moments and points. They need an executive that actually understands the process and is not afraid to take the time to learn it before creating changes. A lot of times we find that executives that we're interviewing and vetting out, they are really good at implementing, but what they're not good is learning how to implement. And the best way to implement is to actually sit back, observe, and figure it out. If you are looking at cultivation, that's, let's say, a 7 to 9 month life cycle. If you get a new chief cultivation officer or COO or whatever it is that comes in, they can't just implement their process immediately, because that's going to mess up production. They need to observe. They need to figure out what works, what doesn't, and maybe finding the balance between the two to get to the result. That result might take a year to actually see the fruits of the labor come, to fruition. So it takes patience. When these companies are looking for an executive, they want someone that matches that goal. They don't want some cookie cutter just because they were at Zappos or just because they were at, I don't know, some, Fortune 500 company, they're automatically going to be successful here. They want somebody that understands that that experience is beneficial but they are also walking into a situation where they need to be a sponge. They need to take the ego out of the equation and be ready to learn. From a mid-management level, it's the same. They want somebody who is actually ready to be excited to be a servant leader versus a dictator. They want somebody who doesn't see a one size fit all approach. So let's say, director of retail, or regional manager. You understand, Caleb, because you've been in that situation, and we see it all the time, that one store is not going to operate the same as the other. You might have one, yeah, you might have one store that has fantastic customer retention, but low sales. But if you're looking at that, that's actually a huge win to have people that have been coming for years. That's a big success moment in cannabis. But the other store that you're managing has no repeat customers. It's in a touristy area, one time big purchase, high sales. Both can be considered success. And I think that these companies that are looking for a manager, they understand that both can find success in their own ways. And where you find the true success is the balance between all of it. So I think when it comes to those mid-management roles, just defining that success is not one size fit all. It's very much going to be dependent on what you're doing, who you're working with, and you really do have to focus on what's right for the company versus what's right for you in the past, and replicating that process over and over again.
Yep. We keep coming back to culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the company and how well you resonate and how well you fit with their vision. I mean,
Yep.
that ultimately, I think, is where the biggest stress, biggest frustration in our careers as we're navigating is when we get with a company and our values do not match.
Mhm.
It's really doing that evaluation of what it is that you're looking for and what the company stands for, and ask. That's that's how you're going to find the right partner.
Well, and so many people go into an interview and they are being asked questions and then they forget to ask. But asking those questions actually really makes your experience better. And asking them in a respectful way and methodical is, of course, essential. You can't just ask weird questions one off. You need to really understand how that's going to add value. But an example that I gave is, if an individual coming from the LGBTQ plus community is looking to find a company that really embraces their beliefs and their values, how are they going to evaluate that? Well, maybe asking what benefits they have. Do they have benefits that includes individuals from the trans community? That's something that culturally you should be assessing. And those tough questions to ask can actually make or break your experience working with a company. Nothing would be more unfortunate that if you join a company that doesn't align with your values because you didn't ask those pertinent questions. If you are a social equity applicant looking to partner with an organization that wants to help get a license with you, are they using you as a employee to use on their license so that they're getting their own gain? Or are they using you to actually be part of their organization? And that using doesn't turn into a manipulative thing, it turns into a partnership. Are you an actual partner? Are you a decision maker? Are they invested in you as an individual versus you because of your status? Things like that, you only get to the bottom of if you're asking those tough questions. And in cannabis, you have to. You need to understand the moral compass of an organization. And that comes from being patient. That comes from asking those questions and really defining what values you're looking for in an organization. I wish I knew that when I was looking. I just happened to get really lucky where the company that I interviewed with really aligns with who I want to be in my career, and their values make me happy. I got very lucky. Unfortunately, not everybody else is that lucky. So as you're looking to interview, asking those tough questions, those potentially awkward questions, and making sure they align with you, make a huge difference. There are individuals out there that don't understand that a company that is privately owned, never planning on getting external investments, and never being acquired or going public can affect how they look at their compensation package versus those that are focused with a company that in the next year are planning on being acquired, selling, or going public. Asking those questions, even if a company isn't able to give you the exact answer you want, help you determine what you're looking for in a company. And then ultimately, the company you join will hopefully be more aligned with the values you're looking to have.
Yep. And it shows that you've done your homework by asking those types of questions. And one of the things on values that I would recommend is ask what type of charities they're involved with, what kind of support they do for their staff of providing volunteer time, or what sort of community involvement do they do when they're when they're having their block parties? Do they go and they look and find people in the neighborhood? Do they like some things like that, that just looking at those kinds of decisions that are value driven is ultimately going to help you to find the right fit for you.
Well, and who's the money behind that company? Those are questions that's going to affect how you operate. If a company has investors from these mass conglomerates that are focused on the dollar versus focused on the person, that's not a bad thing. That's actually really great for people who are focused on the dollar as well. But if you're focused on more than that, which is a good or bad thing, depending on who you are, everybody's different. And I respect all backgrounds and desires in that sense. That's probably not the right organization for somebody that's focused on the ethos of a company. Somebody that might be more driven by compassion versus driven by monetary value. People can land on both sides of the coin. Not one is better than the other. That's kind of the beauty of this ecosystem. There's a place for everyone in terms of what your motivations are, but understanding that is important. Understanding who you are going to actually create a home with, who's going to be that person that you're living with, that company that you're living with and investing your energy into will ultimately make or break your experience in cannabis.
Yep. Yep. So tell us a bit about the resources that Vanks provides job seekers. So for both, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, lots of resources from individuals that are just starting to get in the industry or curious about the industry, all the way to those who have been in the industry and looking to grow. In terms of services we offer, we have a team that focuses on hiring individuals at an entry-level role, more part-time employment, all the way up to the executive search wing of our business and everywhere in between. We try to customize all of our services based on the companies we work with, which means it's not a one size fit all approach. And that's the same thing with candidates. Some candidates want to be more passive in their search. We built out a job board that is free for them to look at, hundreds of jobs posted where they can actually apply and get in touch with a company directly. We also have a team of recruiters that handholds these individuals through a process and make sure that their experience is exceptional, regardless of what type of company they're looking for. Once again, it's not a one size fit all approach. I think what's fun about it is that you can have the experience that you want. There are a lot of people that are passively looking in cannabis. Perfect. You probably don't want to work with a recruiter. You will just want to keep an eye out for things and then get more involved when you're ready to. There's others that are really specific about their job search, and they have the ability to work with someone that appreciates that and values the fact that they want a very unique experience. We love being able to offer both sides of the coin. We don't like the one size fit all approach. We also aren't stuck in those approaches. We love hearing that the feedback that we get, certain things work and certain things maybe can be fixed or can be better. Or there might be a better offering. We create those all the time. When I first started at Vanks, we had no idea what we were doing. We are so focused on the candidate. And something that hasn't changed, even though we've gotten much bigger, is that we want to be focused on the candidate and the company experience that we partner with. So everything that we do is really just focus on them having a good time, a good process, an enjoyable experience, either breaking into cannabis or growing in cannabis, and doing so with a trusted partner.
Your relationship bridge that
Yeah.
you guys help from both sides of, you have the relationship with the companies, then with the candidates, and you're just trying to find where those bridges make sense to connect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's fun. I would say it's like, you can't fit a square into a circle. Right. And when I was recruiting, I always said that, like, I would really love if this person could be great for this role, because that would make my job easier. That would make the company more money. That would make my job easier. It would mean that I could sit back and relax, but it's not as easy as that. A person, you can't make it up what they're looking for and what makes them happy. We don't want to find someone a job and then 2 months later, them call us saying it was the worst job they've ever had. I want to see that the individual that I place as a store manager, let's say at Holistic Industries, is now their VP. And that's a success story I'm proud of. That person found the right home, found the right company, has been nurtured in that organization, has given back, and now she is on an executive team. That's the story that I like celebrating. And our team has done that time and time again. And that's fun for us. We don't like getting a call 2 months later that something doesn't work. And that's why we're proud that I think at this point, I think we saw yesterday a 91% success rate at this point in terms of people we placed. And we're proud of that.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That is
And that's not
saying a
something
lot.
and that's not something that comes from us just doing a hack job. That's not something that comes from us chasing a dollar. That comes from us sitting down and actually focusing on the values of the company and finding somebody that complements that value so that they can find a really good match.
Yep. So, have you heard us talk about culture today? And finding the right culture for you.
Yeah,
I kind of want to lead into that as well. So,
right.
for the aspiring social equity applicants, those that are fortunate enough to get one of those licenses, is going to
Sure.
be developing their culture on
Yep.
what their values are, what kind of individuals do they want to bring in, what's important for that company. So just kind of keep that in mind, that's what makes companies different. It's the people, but it's the values and what drives them.
Sure.
So we talked, let's see. So has Banks worked with any social equity applicants or operators in any other states? Just was curious on some of your interactions there.
Yeah, we've absolutely worked on both ends with companies as well as with candidates. We try to do what is best for the organization and is always in compliance with the state. It's not a one size fit all thing. And we try to just act as a positive partner through that. We try to establish really realistic expectations. From like an advisor standpoint, we like to offer advice for individuals that are looking to either go after licensing on the social equity front, as well as candidates that are looking to break in so that they find the right organization with those values that we spoke about earlier. We really are happy to help in the most compliant and like delicate way, since it is something that a lot of people take advantage of. We don't like to be so focused on one outcome when it comes to social equity. We want to do what's best for the individual, for the company, and also what's compliant with the state. That being said, there's a lot of progress that needs to be made. I wish that we could do more in that sense. And we are always looking to partner with companies that are looking to help us do more, because we need more companies like that. A lot of companies out in cannabis, whether we want to admit it or not, they could do more. They can
Mm-hmm.
do more than just say that they're having a social equity program. They could do more than just saying that they're supporting, individuals from a social equity area, whatever those parameters are. They can
Mm-hmm.
do more, and we want to be part of that. So excited to see what companies come up with. I really am excited to see what goes on with Arizona. I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to seeing more diversity in the individuals that are talking about social equity in Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we need it. We can't talk about social equity if it's the same people that look the same, that don't come from that equitable background. That's not progress. That's actually going against what the social equity program should be doing. So I hope that new markets like Arizona and New York and New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
they don't just say that they're going to do it, they actually follow through with it, and they are proud of the follow through with it. I'm a big believer that in any conversation that somebody has in cannabis, it is a privilege to be able to speak about this plant and work in this industry, and you need to be able to advocate for it. And that also means bringing awareness to the fact that there are 40,000 plus individuals that are still incarcerated for this plan, and we cannot sit here and have a normal conversation about it without highlighting that. And anybody that's in this industry needs to be able to do that and needs to be able to have those tough conversations, because if we don't, we're going to be in a situation where we're having the same problem and history is repeating itself. So I want to do more with social equity. I'm excited for people to do more. I'm excited for people to get educated on the ways that they should do more and how to advocate for it, because we need to. It's essential. If those people are still sitting in prison while we are profiting, something is wrong, and we need to work towards that. And companies and regulations in states that are really advocating for it should be doing so for the right reasons, not just because they want to seem like the best new market out there.
Yep, yep. And I'm very, very positive on how Arizona has taken their approach and tying in the expungement process to it, making it to where the rules are out. So there's a little bit of clarification on what's going to be happening with the documentation, but definitely from what we've seen through the process with Arizona is they've been very open with communicating and really I think are creating that program. So we're getting close to the end of our time here today. So just as a reminder, so Vangst has a wealth of resources for both businesses looking to find staff, as well as individuals looking to break into the industry. I would recommend getting started with any kind of research, reading, understanding the industry, learning new terms, learning the jargon, because every industry has its jargon, and doing what you can to prepare yourself for whichever direction that you go. There's 26 licenses. There's more than 26 interested groups of looking at getting into the industry. And I think if you have any takeaways from what we talked about today is that there's so many different opportunities, so many different companies, cultures, locations, and it's really finding what's going to be the best fit for you. Kelsey, I want to give you an opportunity if you had anything that you wanted to add or a send off to everybody.
Sure. Appreciate the time. I always tell people, please reach out if you need anything. You can always reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me on banks.com. You can find my profile in there and shoot me an email. We do have a bunch of resources, whether it's weekly or monthly AMA sessions, either focus on specific things or more broad. You can always reach out to our team of recruiters at any point if you have a more specific question. You can reach out to the companies that we're partnered with also by creating a profile at banks.com. We also do have a forum that we created, Banks Community, where you can actually ask those questions and get answers in real time for not just our company, but also the 40,000 plus people that we have in our network. So please reach out at any point. We want to help. We are not this one size fit all, Q&A answer machine. So reach out. We want to make sure that the experience either breaking into cannabis or growing in cannabis is as positive as possible.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you very much, Kelsey. I really appreciate your time. I want to give another shout out to our gracious sponsor, 420 Collections. Just a reminder on that, we have 420 Medibles at all of the dispensaries for those delicious edibles, and their 420 skincare CBD line available throughout the country. My name is Caleb Tice. I have been your host here today. We're very, very thankful for Miss Kelsey Applebaum taking the time away from her day. Please go and check out Vankst and all of the great resources that they have. And help to navigate and find where ultimately you want to end up. So thank you very much, and make it a great day.